The world wasn't supposed to know yet. Not tonight. Not like this. But a single anonymous post on Reddit detonated across the internet like dynamite, claiming Oak Island's greatest secret had already been uncovered. The post contained only 3 blurry images. Stone corridors deep underground, marked with crude symbols, dripping with centuries of silence. Within minutes, the images vanished, deleted by the poster. But it was already too late. Thousands had saved them, re-uploaded them, dissected them, frame by frame. Conspiracies ignited instantly. Templar vaults, hidden cities, ancient guardians. And then hours later, the impossible happened. Hit that like button and subscribe now, because what you're about to see is Oak Island's biggest shock in 228 years. The History Channel shattered its own schedule, pulling every program off the air. No promos, no countdown, no teasers, just an emergency slate that read, Confirmed Discovery, Oak Island. The broadcast began live, raw, unprepared, and viewers sensed it immediately. This wasn't a planned reveal polished for TV. It was reactive, forced. Something had leaked, and the Laginas had no choice but to show the world. The feed cut to floodlit chaos on Oak Island. Cameras jerked across mud and machinery as crews swarmed a gaping hole in the earth. And standing at the edge of it, Rick Lagina, his face red with fury, his jaw clenched so tight it looked ready to crack. He wasn't celebrating. He wasn't even smiling. He looked like a man whose hand had been forced, as if someone had stolen the moment he'd waited for all his life. Millions watching across the globe understood instantly. Whatever had been uncovered, it wasn't supposed to surface like this. Then the camera steadied, peering into the earth itself, and the world gasped. This wasn't just a chamber. It wasn't a single vault, a single pit, or even a cavern. It was a sprawling subterranean structure, vast and engineered with chilling precision. Pillared corridors stretched away into the darkness like the streets of a buried city. Engineers on site spoke in hushed disbelief. Their instruments confirmed the tunnels extended far beyond the island, reaching beneath the Atlantic itself. Stone walls reinforced with timbers older than colonial Nova Scotia gleamed under the harsh lights. One tunnel was already sagging, threatening to collapse, yet others seemed endless, as if the island was merely the doorway to a fortress deliberately hidden for centuries. The broadcast team was breathless, their voices shaking, reminding the audience that nothing in North America should predate the first European settlements. Yet here lay undeniable proof of construction far older, designed by hands that should not have been here. Theories surged in real time: Phoenicians, Vikings, Knights Templar, a secret order operating in shadows before the New World was even known to history. But speculation gave way to shock when the first chamber revealed its prize. At the center of the cavern stood a chest, sealed with iron bands blackened by centuries underground. Workers struggled with crowbars, sparks flying as the corroded lock cracked open. The crowd leaned forward, expecting the cascade of gold coins that legend had promised for generations. Instead, the chest groaned open to reveal something far stranger. Stacks of parchment scrolls, brittle but intact, written in languages few could recognize. One parchment, carefully lifted into the floodlights, bore a phrase that froze the air: "The Guardians of Zion." Historians in the broadcast tent fell silent, their faces pale. That phrase had appeared only in whispers. Suppressed texts linked to the most dangerous Templar legends, fragments that spoke of guardians sworn to protect relics of unearthly power. Suddenly, the broadcast jolted, cameras whipping away as armed security stormed the dig. The scrolls were seized immediately, yanked from the archaeologists' hands. Officials barked orders off camera. The audience saw Rick Lagina lunge forward, trying to intervene, his shouts drowned in static as the feed stuttered. When the image cleared, the chest was gone, the parchments vanished, and the narrative controlled. But the damage was already done. The world had seen just enough to know something forbidden had been uncovered, and something even more dangerous was being concealed. That was when the real blackout began. Helicopters tore through the night sky, rotors hammering the air above Oak Island as floodlights swept across the excavation like a raid in progress. The live broadcast cameras caught the beams for only seconds before the feed collapsed into darkness. For several long minutes, nothing but silence and static filled millions of living rooms across the world. Chat forums erupted in rage, viewers pounding out furious comments, hashtags exploding in real time. What are they hiding? Why cut the feed now? Speculation spread like wildfire, and when the cameras finally blinked back online, the scene was transformed. Rick and Marty Lagina stood stiff at the edge of the pit, flanked on both sides by soldiers in dark Canadian uniforms. Their body language said everything. Their eyes darting, shoulders hunched, their mouths moving carefully as if each word was being weighed before it left their lips. They were reading from a script, a prepared statement that felt like it had been handed to them minutes before. The tone was flat, sterile, stripped of the raw awe that had shaken the earlier moments of discovery. Gone was Rick's trembling passion, gone was Marty's restless energy. In their place, two men who looked cornered, forced to choke back truths they had spent their lives chasing. Behind them, guards tightened their circle, weapons glinting under floodlights. It was no longer an archaeological dig. It was a lockdown. The History Channel's commentators tried to maintain calm, muttering phrases about safety protocols and controlled investigation, but the audience wasn't fooled. Clips of Rick's clenched fists, Marty's tightened jaw, and the silent soldiers towering behind them flooded Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube within minutes. The verdict from the internet was unanimous. The Laginas were being censored in real time. Oak Island had crossed into dangerous territory, and someone higher up had stepped in to seize control. When the broadcast panned back to the newly exposed chamber, the atmosphere shifted further. No longer did the air shimmer with the anticipation of gold or jewels. Instead, horror set in. The first chamber wasn't filled with treasure at all. It was a tomb. Rows upon rows of skeletal remains lay sprawled in eerie formation, armored bones caked in centuries of soil, swords and shields still clutched, as if the dead had refused to surrender even in death. The camera lingered on a knight's skull, helmet still intact, a rusted blade lying across his chest like an eternal oath. The arrangement was deliberate, ritualistic, the bodies aligned in a circle as if guarding something at the center. Gasps rippled through the tent of experts watching the feed. Carbon dating equipment buzzed in the background, and when the preliminary readings flashed on screen, the results were undeniable. These men had died here over 200 years before Columbus ever set foot in the Americas. Shock turned to awe, then to fear. One historian whispered into his microphone, the words barely audible. These were Templar knights. They didn't just pass through here, they died here, protecting something. The broadcast fell silent as the camera pulled back, the rows of bones shimmering under the lights like a spectral army standing guard across centuries. Excitement bled away, replaced by reverence and unease. The Oak Island mystery had always carried whispers of the Templars, but now, staring at an entire chamber of their remains, the speculation hardened into grim reality. What they had been guarding, and what had slain them, remained unclear. But their sacrifice confirmed one chilling truth. Oak Island wasn't simply a vault for treasure. It was a fortress, a burial ground, a secret worth dying for. And at the very heart of that chamber, beyond the ring of skeletal guardians, lay the object that silenced even the most hardened archaeologists. Resting on a raised stone plinth was a massive metallic sphere, its surface dark yet faintly luminous, humming with a low vibration that vibrated through the ground. Cameras zoomed in, showing seams etched with geometric precision, patterns spiraling across its surface like maps of unknown worlds. When one gloved archaeologist dared to press a hand against it, the hum deepened, and the lights in the chamber flickered. The commentators scrambled to explain. Some insisted it was an ancient navigational device, designed to align with stars no longer visible in the modern night sky. Others whispered of a weapon, a relic of impossible technology hidden away for centuries. But whatever it was, scanners refused to penetrate it. X-rays, magnetic resonance, even ground-penetrating radar, all returned garbled static, as if the object resisted being measured by modern means. Rick Lagina stepped into frame, his face pale but resolute. He stared at the sphere for a long moment, then turned back to the camera. His voice cracked but carried conviction. This is not gold. This is not treasure. This is something far more dangerous. The words cut through the air like a blade, sparking shouts and whispers both inside the chamber and across the internet. Officials, flanked by armed guards, moved quickly to seize the object, barking orders at the crew. Ropes, chains, and heavy machinery were hauled into position, but no matter how they tried, the sphere would not budge. It was as though the plinth and the sphere were one, fused by time or by something far more deliberate. The guards grew agitated, shouting for more force, more power, but each attempt ended in failure. The sphere remained rooted, its hum growing louder, deeper, resonating through the stone walls until the very ground seemed to tremble. On the surface, storm clouds rolled across the Nova Scotia sky. On the island, the atmosphere tightened, the excavation site no longer a place of discovery, but of mounting dread. At the center of it all, the sphere pulsed, silent, immovable, eternal, its glow pressing on every chest like a weight. Cameras lingered, waiting for what it might awaken next, but the pressure didn't just bend the earth, it bent the people. That was when Rick broke. His voice cracked through the broadcast, raw and unfiltered, shattering the silence that had gripped the island. His face was pale, his eyes wide with fire as he ignored the handlers pressing at his shoulder. "We've been told not to show you everything we found," he blurted, words trembling with both rage and desperation. For a fleeting second, the mask slipped, the script torn to shreds. He wasn't reading a statement, he was speaking from the gut. The soldiers froze, unsure whether to drag him back or let him finish, and in that hesitation, the cameras captured what should never have been seen. The lens swung just enough to catch the edge of another sealed vault, its outline etched in the rock wall, heavy doors half buried in rubble. It was only a glimpse, half a second before the feed jolted away and the screen went to static. When the broadcast returned, Rick was gone from view. The commentary scrambled, officials muttering phrases about technical difficulties. But the damage had already been done. Screenshots flooded the internet, pixelated images dissected in real time. Freeze frames lit up Reddit threads, Twitter feeds, Telegram channels. Millions of eyes zoomed in on the faint outline of that second vault, and hashtags surged to the top of every platform. Hashtag Let Rick Speak, and hashtag Oak Island Cover Up. The rebellion couldn't be contained. Within minutes, rumors spun wild. Insiders claimed that the vault Rick had pointed toward was no ordinary chamber, but a sealed corridor blocked with thick lead plates. Whispers leaked of crates hidden within, of parchments too volatile for public knowledge. Some said it was a library of forbidden gospels, texts struck from history by church councils centuries ago. Theories flared that the scrolls could alter the foundations of Christianity itself, rewriting everything from Jerusalem to Rome. As speculation grew, the Vatican itself weighed in with a statement issued in the dead of night. A spokesperson read stiffly, the words heavy and cold, "Falsehoods must not spread. Rumors must not distract from faith." The tone only fueled the fire. Instead of calming viewers, it confirmed their worst suspicions, that Oak Island's secret was no mere treasure hunt, but a spiritual time bomb waiting to detonate. Theories spiraled beyond containment. Some swore the chamber housed the long-lost Gospel of Magdalene. Others whispered that the Ark of the Covenant had been carried across the sea and buried beneath Nova Scotia. And again, the name surfaced that had haunted Oak Island for generations: the Holy Grail. On the island itself, pressure mounted as crews tried to force their way deeper. Heavy drills rattled the cavern walls, sparks showering in the damp air. The atmosphere thickened with dread. Workers moved with urgency, knowing officials watched their every step, desperate to regain control of a story unraveling before their eyes. Then, disaster struck. The cameras caught it in brutal clarity, the groan of stone, the thunder of collapse. One wall gave way with terrifying force, a cascade of rock and soil crashing into the chamber. Dust exploded upward, blinding the broadcast feed, choking workers who screamed into radios for help. For endless seconds, the world watched nothing but swirling gray haze and chaos. Crews scrambled in the half-light, dragging men coughing and clawing their way out of the rubble. A worker was pinned, his arm trapped, and for a horrifying moment it seemed Oak Island would claim another victim. But just as quickly as it began, the collapse subsided. The chamber stabilized. The survivor was hauled free, bloodied but alive. And then the dust cleared, and the collapse revealed something even more shocking. Where the stone wall had fallen away, a massive golden altar jutted from the ruin, its surface shimmering under floodlights. Unlike the crude beams and stonework around it, the altar was flawless, unscarred by time. Carved into its top was a map. Solid gold, lines etched so deep they caught the light and glowed like fire. The workers froze, their exhaustion forgotten, as they stared at the impossible artifact. Rick, his clothes streaked with dirt, stepped forward slowly, almost reverently, brushing the dust from its surface. The camera zoomed in, and the world leaned forward together. The map wasn't of Oak Island. It wasn't even of Nova Scotia. The engravings stretched wide, an ocean's expanse etched in gold, with a clear route traced across the Atlantic. The line began in Europe, winding from the coast of Portugal, crossing into the New World. It marked harbors, islands, hidden points along the way, each carefully plotted. But the line didn't stop at Oak Island. It continued, pressing westward into the continent itself, deeper than anyone had dared imagine. A silence fell across the broadcast. Viewers felt it, an almost physical shift. Oak Island had always been treated as the mystery, the end of the search, the place where the world's greatest treasure was supposed to rest. But the golden altar told a different story. Oak Island wasn't the destination. It was only a waypoint, a staging ground, a fortress designed to protect a secret that lay far beyond its shores. The treasure, whatever it truly was, had never been meant to stay buried beneath this small island. It was part of something larger, a network that spanned oceans, guarded by centuries of blood, sacrifice, and silence. The officials tried to cut the feed again, scrambling, voices rising in panic, but the image of that golden map had already been burned into history. Screenshots multiplied in seconds, shared in every language, every platform, every corner of the globe. No amount of control could erase what had been shown. The world now knew. Oak Island was not the end of the story. It was only the beginning, and as those images spread like wildfire, the experts pounced. Scholars crowded around the golden altar itself, their voices a rising storm of disbelief as the engravings came into focus. The lines etched into the shining surface were not random scratches, not artistic decoration. They were deliberate routes, crossing the Atlantic in unmistakable arcs. From the Portuguese coastline outward, the lines traced voyages that predated Columbus by decades, perhaps centuries. Each port, each waypoint, was marked with symbols known to Templar historians, crosses, compasses, and cryptic runes long whispered about in suppressed manuscripts. The realization hit like a thunderclap. Oak Island was never meant to be the final resting place of anything. It was a staging post, a fortress waypoint on a chain that stretched across oceans. The map confirmed suspicions too bold to voice until now. The Knights Templar had crossed to the New World long before the world knew it existed. The feed zoomed in, showing Portugal circled in gold, an origin point unmistakable. The camera swept across the Atlantic, tracing the line through the Azores, past unmarked islands, and straight to Nova Scotia. But it didn't stop there. The line pushed inland, deeper into the wilderness of North America. Viewers everywhere sat frozen, realizing that what had always been sold as the world's greatest treasure mystery was in fact only one chapter of a much larger saga. Oak Island wasn't the treasure. It was the clue. The fortress was only a lockbox, a shield for something even more unimaginable hidden elsewhere. Theories ignited instantly across the globe. Academics scrambled to cross-reference the markings with maritime charts. Cryptographers compared the symbols to medieval Templar codes. Amateur sleuths drew maps online, lining the routes with rumored treasure sites from Newfoundland to the Rocky Mountains. And all the while, Rick Lagina stood before the altar, his expression one of equal parts awe and dread. He whispered under his breath, words barely audible to the microphone. It was never about the gold. As the cameras lingered on the glowing altar, chaos struck above ground. Security radios erupted with shouting. The feed lurched as cameramen ran toward the commotion. In the confusion, a crew member was dragged into the floodlights, his pockets bulging, his hands bound behind him. Guards emptied his jacket to the ground, and with a clatter, half a dozen ancient coins spilled into the mud. They gleamed under the lights, cross-stamped Templar silver, priceless relics torn from the chamber without permission. The man's face was pale, his eyes darting with guilt and fear. Rick stormed into frame, his voice shaking with fury as he pointed at the thief. "This is sacred history, not a payday!" His words echoed across the site, heard by millions watching live. The betrayal cut deeper than theft. It was a desecration, a violation of everything the team had sworn to protect. Officials barked orders, dragging the man away, but whispers spread like wildfire among the crew. If one of their own had been bribed, how many more had been compromised? How long had private collectors been circling the dig, slipping money through unseen hands, waiting for the moment to strike? Social media exploded, dividing into camps. Some condemned the betrayal as proof that greed corrupted every layer of the hunt. Others speculated that the man was a scapegoat, framed by officials desperate to justify the military presence on the island. Still, others whispered of infiltration, that private syndicates had agents embedded in the excavation from the start. For the first time, the team's unity cracked under the weight of suspicion. Trust dissolved, replaced by side eyes and muttered accusations. Oak Island had always consumed fortunes and lives, but now it was consuming loyalty itself. The betrayal hung heavy in the air, poisoning every breath, until Rick finally stepped forward again, his voice steady but hollow. "If they think they can buy this history, they are wrong. We will not let them take it. His vow rippled outward, stirring both cheers and fear. Yet even as he spoke, shadows of doubt lingered. The team wasn't whole anymore. Somewhere inside the ranks, cracks had formed, and through those cracks, the outside world was seeping in like poison. Before anyone could reckon with the fallout, the broadcast shuddered. Screens flickered, the camera zoomed out abruptly, and then officials stormed into frame. Hands covered lenses, guards shouted commands, and the live feed collapsed into static once more. Panic surged online. For a moment, it seemed the broadcast was lost for good, until the image returned, jerky and blurred. Rick stood before the camera, sweat streaking his face, soldiers looming at his sides. He leaned toward the lens, his voice hoarse but defiant. "It's bigger than Oak Island." Then the screen cut to black. The world erupted. No conclusion, no closure, just that single searing phrase looping across headlines and hashtags. Rumors spiraled instantly. Some claimed another broadcast was already scheduled in 72 hours, an emergency revealed to control the fallout. Others argued it would never air, that officials had locked the discovery under classified seals. Conspiracy channels went into overdrive, swearing that the Vatican, NATO, and secret orders were pulling strings behind the curtain. By morning, every major newspaper across the globe carried variations of the same headline: "History rewritten beneath Oak Island." Editorials speculated about Templar voyages, hidden gospels, and relics that could upend religion and politics alike. Stock markets trembled, governments issued denials, and online forums overflowed with speculation about the Golden Map's inland destination. Was the real treasure buried deep in America's heartland? Was Oak Island only a breadcrumb leading to a secret that could alter the world? And then, without warning, the History Channel's official feed returned for a final, chilling message. Against a stark black background, white words burned across the screen. Discovery classified. To be continued. It was not the end. It was the cliffhanger of centuries.